The phone vibrated against the mahogany conference table, cutting through the tension of the room like a blade through silk. 12 men sat around the table, each one a lieutenant in the Castellano crime family, each one waiting for their boss to finish outlining the strategy that would determine the fate of their territories for the next decade. Dominic Castellano glanced at the screen. Rosa, his housekeeper, never called during business hours. Never. In the 7 years she'd worked for his family, she had never once interrupted a meeting. "Excuse me, gentlemen." Dominic's voice carried the quiet authority that had made him one of the most feared men on the eastern seaboard. "I need to take this." He stepped away from the table, moving toward the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the penthouse office as he answered. "Rosa, what is it?" The voice on the other end was barely a whisper, trembling with barely contained panic. "Sir, please come home now. She'll destroy her. Please, you have to come quickly." Dominic's blood turned to ice. Rosa was a woman who had seen things in his household that would make most people run screaming. She had cleaned up after late-night meetings that left stains on carpets she never asked about. She had served coffee to men whose names appeared in newspaper headlines connected to disappearances. She had watched Dominic's empire grow from a regional operation to a multi-state enterprise without ever flinching. But right now, her voice was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. "Rosa, slow down. Who's going to destroy who?" "Your wife, sir, Mrs. Castellano. She's hurting Sophia. I've never seen anything like this. Please, Mr. Castellano, please come home." The mention of his daughter's name sent electricity shooting through Dominic's veins. Sophia, his 7-year-old princess. The only light in his life since her mother, his beloved first wife Catherine, had died 4 years ago from complications during surgery. "I'm on my way." Dominic ended the call and turned back to his lieutenants, his face a mask of controlled urgency that immediately silenced every conversation in the room. Meetings postponed, family emergency. No one questioned him, no one dared. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what Dominic Castellano discovers in his own home will expose a web of lies, manipulation, and cruelty that has been festering under his roof for years. And what he does about it will change everything. Before we continue, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support means everything. Now, let's get back to the story. The drive from downtown to the Castellano estate usually took 45 minutes. Dominic made it in 22. His black Mercedes cut through traffic like a shark through water, his driver understanding from a single glance that this was not a time for following speed limits. As the car pulled through the wrought iron gates of the estate, Dominic's eyes scanned the property with the practiced attention of a man who had survived multiple assassination attempts. The gardens were immaculate, the fountains bubbling peacefully, the exterior of the mansion presenting the same picture of elegant prosperity it always did. But something felt wrong. The usual sounds of household activity were absent. No gardeners tending the roses, no security personnel making their rounds. Even the birds seemed to have gone quiet, as if the entire estate was holding its breath. Dominic was out of the car before it fully stopped, his Italian leather shoes crunching against the graveled driveway as he strode toward the front entrance. The massive oak doors, imported from a centuries-old monastery in Tuscany, swung open before he reached them. Rosa stood in the doorway, her face pale and streaked with tears. In all the years she'd worked for him, Dominic had never seen the unflappable Guatemalan woman cry. "Where?" The single word carried more weight than 1,000 questions. "The conservatory, sir. She took Sophia there an hour ago. I tried to stop her, but she threatened to have me fired if I interfered. I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry, sir. I'm so sorry." Dominic placed a hand on Rosa's shoulder, feeling her tremble beneath his touch. "You did the right thing calling me. Now go to the kitchen and wait there. I'll handle this." As Rosa hurried away, Dominic moved through his home with the silent precision of a predator. The mansion was a showcase of wealth and power, every room filled with priceless artwork, antique furniture, and the accumulated trophies of 3 generations of Castellano ambition. But none of it mattered now. Nothing mattered except reaching his daughter. The conservatory was at the far end of the east wing, a beautiful glass-enclosed space that Catherine had designed before her death. It had been her sanctuary, filled with exotic orchids and the soft sound of a small waterfall she'd had installed. After she died, Dominic had maintained it exactly as she'd left it, a living memorial to the woman who had shown him that even men like him could be loved. Sophia had inherited her mother's love for the space. She spent hours there, reading books among the flowers, talking to the plants as if they could understand her. It was her safe place, her connection to the mother she barely remembered. The thought of that sacred space being violated made Dominic's hands curl into fists. As he approached the conservatory doors, he heard it. A voice, sharp and venomous, cutting through the peaceful silence like broken glass. "You think you're special, don't you? You think being Dominic Castellano's daughter makes you some kind of princess. Let me tell you something, you spoiled little brat. You're nothing. Nothing but a burden that your father is too sentimental to get rid of." Dominic's blood ran cold. He recognized that voice. It was the voice of Vanessa Castellano, his wife of 2 years, the woman he had married because she seemed like the perfect solution to his broken family. He had been so wrong. To understand what Dominic walked into that afternoon, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to the day Vanessa Hartwell first entered the Castellano family's orbit. It was 3 years after Catherine's death. Dominic was drowning. Not in the traditional sense, his business was thriving, his enemies were neutralized, his empire was expanding, but in the crushing loneliness that came with raising a child alone while running a criminal organization. Sophia was 4 years old and asking questions he couldn't answer. "Where did Mommy go? Why doesn't she come back? Why do you look so sad, Daddy?" His lieutenants urged him to remarry. A man in his position needed a wife, they argued. Someone to manage the household, to raise his daughter, to present the image of respectability at the charity galas and political fundraisers that were essential to maintaining legitimate business fronts. Dominic resisted for almost a year. The memory of Catherine was still too fresh, the wound of her loss still too raw. How could he replace the woman who had known him before he became the boss, who had loved him when he was just a hungry young man with dangerous ambitions and gentle hands? Then Vanessa appeared. She was introduced at a charity auction for children's cancer research, the same disease that had taken Catherine's life when complications arose during her treatment. Vanessa was the event coordinator, a stunning blonde with credentials from the finest East Coast finishing schools, and a family name that opened doors in society circles where Dominic's money alone couldn't buy entry. She was sophisticated, charming, and seemed genuinely moved by Dominic's story of loss. When she met Sophia for the first time, she knelt down to the little girl's level and spoke to her with such warmth and patience that Dominic felt something crack open in his chest. "You have your mother's eyes," Vanessa had told Sophia. "I can see how special she must have been." Sophia, who had been withdrawn and suspicious of the parade of women who had tried to catch her father's attention, actually smiled. It felt like a miracle. The courtship was swift by Dominic's standards. 6 months of dinners, trips, and carefully choreographed family outings, where Vanessa consistently demonstrated her ability to connect with Sophia. She read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. She remembered Sophia's favorite foods and had them prepared for every visit. She never pushed too hard, never tried to replace Catherine, always presenting herself as a friend first, a potential mother figure second. Dominic's lieutenants approved. His business associates were impressed. Even Rosa, usually suspicious of outsiders, admitted that Mrs. Vanessa seemed good for the little one. So Dominic proposed, and Vanessa accepted, and the wedding was a masterpiece of elegance and excess that made the society pages for weeks. What no one knew, what no one could have predicted, was that they had all been played by a master manipulator. Vanessa Hartwell hadn't stumbled into that charity auction by accident. She had spent months researching Dominic Castellano, studying his habits, his weaknesses, his desperate need for a mother figure for his daughter. She had cultivated her introduction through mutual acquaintances, had rehearsed her responses to questions about Catherine, had practiced the exact tone of voice that would make a grieving widower believe she understood his pain. Because Vanessa Hartwell understood one thing above all else. Power came in many forms, and marriage to the right man was the fastest path for a woman with her particular set of skills. She came from old money that had long since run out. Her family name was impressive, but the bank accounts attached to it were empty. The finishing schools and society connections had been investments her parents made with their last resources, gambles on their daughter's ability to marry well and restore the Hartwell fortune. Vanessa had failed twice before. Her first marriage, to a hedge fund manager, ended when his fund collapsed and he fled to a non-extradition country. Her second, to a pharmaceutical executive, ended when his company's stock tanked and he put a gun in his mouth rather than face the SEC investigation. Dominic Castellano represented her third and final chance. He was wealthy beyond measure, powerful enough to protect that wealth, and desperate enough for domestic stability that he wouldn't look too closely at her motives. The only obstacle was Sophia. From the very first moment, Vanessa had recognized the threat the child posed. Dominic's love for his daughter was absolute, unconditional, and unwavering. Every decision he made, from business strategies to dinner reservations, took Sophia into account. His eyes lit up when she entered a room. His voice softened when he spoke to her. His entire demeanor shifted from dangerous crime lord to gentle father the moment she was present. Sophia was Vanessa's competition for resources that should have been hers alone. So Vanessa did what she did best. She performed. She played the role of loving stepmother with Oscar-worthy precision, all while waiting for the right moment to begin reshaping the household dynamics in her favor. That moment came 3 months after the wedding. It started small, as these things always do. Vanessa began making comments about Sophia's behavior when Dominic wasn't around. Nothing overtly cruel, just observations delivered in tones of concern. Sophia seems a bit hyperactive today. Perhaps less sugar in her diet would help her focus. I noticed Sophia left her toys in the hallway again. Children need structure, boundaries. Sophia interrupted me 3 times during my phone call. It's natural for children her age to seek attention, but we should probably address it before it becomes a habit. Rosa noticed the shift immediately. The warmth that had characterized Vanessa's interactions with Sophia began to cool, replaced by a critical distance that manifested in small corrections and subtle criticisms. Sophia, ladies don't run in the house. Sophia, that dress is wrinkled. What would people think if they saw you like that? Sophia, your father is very busy. Don't bother him with silly questions. The little girl, desperate to please the new mother figure in her life, tried to adapt. She walked instead of ran. She checked her appearance constantly. She stopped going to her father's office to show him her drawings or tell him about her day. Dominic noticed that Sophia seemed quieter, more reserved, but Vanessa had explanations ready. She's just adjusting to the new family dynamic. It's perfectly normal for children to test boundaries during transitions. She's growing up, Dominic. Little girls naturally become more composed as they mature. I've been working with her on being more ladylike. You want her to be prepared for society, don't you? And Dominic, exhausted from running an empire and grateful to have someone managing the domestic sphere, accepted these explanations without question. He didn't see what happened behind closed doors when he was away on business. He didn't hear the words Vanessa used when there were no witnesses. He didn't know that his bright, curious, joyful daughter was being systematically broken down by the woman he had trusted to love her. Rosa saw everything. She saw Sophia flinch when Vanessa entered a room. She saw the little girl's appetite diminish, her laughter fade, her drawings become darker and smaller. She saw bruises that appeared on Sophia's arms after accidents that only seemed to happen when Vanessa was supervising. Rosa documented it all. She was a smart woman, a survivor who had escaped violence in her home country and built a new life through hard work and discretion. She understood that accusations against a powerful man's wife required evidence. She understood that her word alone would not be enough to overcome Vanessa's carefully constructed image. So Rosa took photographs when she could. She wrote detailed notes in a journal she kept hidden in her quarters. She recorded dates and times and specific phrases that Vanessa used to tear down Sophia's self-esteem. She also tried, in her own careful way, to protect Sophia from the worst of it. She made sure the child ate properly by preparing her favorite foods. She offered comfort and reassurance when Vanessa's cruelty left Sophia in tears. She became the safe harbor in a household that had become increasingly hostile. But Rosa knew she was fighting a losing battle. Vanessa was escalating. The verbal abuse was becoming more vicious, the accidents more frequent. Whatever dam had been holding back Vanessa's true nature was cracking, and Rosa feared what would happen when it finally broke. That day came on a cold November afternoon, when Dominic was across the city in a meeting and Sophia made the mistake of touching something she shouldn't have. The conservatory was Vanessa's least favorite room in the mansion. She hated the humidity, the earthy smell, the constant reminder that this space had been designed by and for another woman. She especially hated that Sophia spent so much time there, communing with the ghost of a mother who should have been forgotten by now. Vanessa had been planning to redesign the conservatory for months. Replace the exotic orchids with more fashionable arrangements. Remove the waterfall that Catherine had loved. Erase every trace of the first Mrs. Castellano from this house that should have been Vanessa's domain. But Sophia had overheard her discussing the plans with an interior designer, and the child had done something unprecedented. She had gone to her father and begged him not to let Vanessa change Mommy's garden. Dominic, softened by his daughter's tearful plea and his own sentimental attachment to Catherine's memory, had told Vanessa that the conservatory was to remain untouched. Vanessa had smiled graciously and agreed. She had been waiting for an opportunity to punish Sophia ever since. That opportunity came when Sophia accidentally knocked over a crystal vase that had been part of Vanessa's contribution to the conservatory's decor. The vase wasn't valuable. Vanessa had bought it specifically to give herself a presence in the space, but Sophia didn't know that. The little girl had been practicing a dance routine she'd learned in her ballet class, spinning among the orchids like a tiny fairy. Her elbow caught the vase, sending it crashing to the tile floor in an explosion of crystal shards. Sophia froze, staring at the mess in horror. That was exactly when Vanessa walked in. Dominic stood outside the conservatory door, listening to his wife's voice cut through the peaceful space like a scalpel through flesh. "Look at what you've done, you clumsy little monster. That vase cost more than most people make in a month. But you wouldn't know anything about value, would you? You've never had to work for anything in your pathetic little life." "I'm sorry, Mama Vanessa." Sophia's voice was tiny, trembling. "It was an accident. I was just dancing and I didn't see." "Dancing? Is that what you call that graceless flailing? You looked like a dying bird, Sophia. A dying bird with no coordination and no future in anything that requires actual talent." Dominic's hand tightened on the door handle, but he didn't enter. Not yet. He needed to hear this. He needed to understand the full scope of what had been happening in his home. "Your mother would be so disappointed in you," Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with cruel satisfaction. "Oh yes, the sainted Catherine. Everyone acts like she was some kind of angel, but let me tell you a secret, Sophia. Angels don't die and leave their children behind. Angels don't abandon their families. Your mother was weak. She was selfish. She chose to die rather than stay and raise you properly." "That's not true," Sophia's voice cracked with desperation. "Mommy was sick. She didn't choose to leave me. She chose to have a risky surgery when she could have managed her condition. She chose her own comfort over her responsibility to you. That's the legacy of the great Catherine Castellano, a daughter who breaks things and a husband who can't move on." Dominic heard a sound that made his blood boil, the sharp crack of palm against cheek. "Don't you dare cry," Vanessa hissed. Don't you dare make yourself the victim after what you've done. You're going to clean up every piece of this broken vase with your bare hands, and if I find a single shard left on this floor, you'll wish you'd never been born. But I might cut myself. Then you'll learn to be more careful, won't you? Dominic had heard enough. He pushed open the conservatory door and stepped into the space that his first wife had created with such love, the space that his second wife had violated with such cruelty. What he saw froze him in place. Sophia was on her knees on the tile floor, surrounded by shattered crystal. Her cheek bore the bright red imprint of Vanessa's hand. Her small fingers were already bleeding from where she'd tried to pick up the sharp pieces. Her eyes, so much like Catherine's, were swimming with tears she was desperately trying not to let fall. Vanessa stood over her like a predator over prey, dressed in an immaculate white designer suit that seemed obscenely pristine against the backdrop of the child's suffering. When Vanessa saw Dominic, her face underwent a transformation that was almost impressive in its speed. The cruel triumph vanished, replaced by an expression of concerned exasperation. Dominic, thank goodness you're here. Sophia had another one of her episodes. She broke my grandmother's vase and then attacked me when I tried to calm her down. I'm worried about her mental state, frankly. Perhaps we should consider having her evaluated by a professional. The lies rolled off Vanessa's tongue with practiced ease. For 2 years, this woman had been manipulating reality, reframing every instance of her abuse as Sophia's misbehavior, painting herself as the patient stepmother dealing with a troubled child. But Dominic wasn't looking at Vanessa. He was looking at his daughter. He was seeing, for the first time, the way Sophia held herself, the defensive posture, the downcast eyes, the trembling that seemed to run through her entire small body. This wasn't a child who had just had an accident and was upset about a broken vase. This was a child who had been broken herself, systematically, over months or perhaps years. "Papa," Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. She was looking at him with an expression that shattered his heart. Hope and terror mingled together, as if she desperately wanted his help, but feared that asking for it would make things worse. Dominic crossed the conservatory in 3 swift strides and knelt beside his daughter, heedless of the crystal shards that bit into his knees. He took her bleeding hands gently in his own, examining the cuts with eyes that had assessed countless wounds over the course of his violent career. "It's okay, Princess," he said softly. "I'm here now, you're safe." "Dominic, don't coddle her." Vanessa's voice carried an edge of warning. "She needs to learn that actions have consequences, if we don't." "Quiet." The single word cut through the conservatory like a blade. Dominic didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet command carried more weight than any shout could have. Vanessa's mouth snapped shut. Dominic helped Sophia to her feet and guided her toward a bench surrounded by Catherine's orchids. He sat her down gently and produced a handkerchief from his pocket, carefully wrapping it around her bleeding fingers. "Sophia, I need you to tell me the truth. Can you do that for me?" The little girl nodded, but her eyes darted nervously toward Vanessa. "Don't look at her, look at me." Dominic's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm your father, I will always protect you. No matter what anyone has told you, no matter what you've been threatened with, you can tell me anything. Do you understand?" Sophia's lower lip trembled. For a moment, she seemed balanced on a knife's edge between conditioned silence and desperate confession. Then the dam broke. "She hurts me, Papa." The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other like water through a broken barrier. "She hurts me all the time when you're not here. She says terrible things about Mommy. She says I'm worthless and stupid, and that you don't really love me. She makes me do chores for hours without food if I make mistakes. She pinches me where the bruises won't show. She told me that if I ever told you, she would make sure I was sent away to a boarding school where no one would ever find me." Each word was a hammer blow to Dominic's heart. He listened without interrupting, his face carefully controlled even as rage built inside him like a nuclear reaction approaching critical mass. "She made me promise never to tell. She said you would choose her over me because I'm just a reminder of your dead wife, and you want to forget Mommy ever existed. She said you only keep me around because it would look bad for your business if you sent me away. That's enough, Vanessa's composure finally cracked. She's lying, Dominic. Children lie all the time. It's classic attention-seeking behavior. She resents me because I try to impose structure on her chaotic little life. She's manipulating you. Dominic rose slowly to his feet. When he turned to face his wife, the temperature in the conservatory seemed to drop by 10 degrees. Rosa, he called out, and his voice carried through the mansion with commanding authority. Within moments, Rosa appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Sir, how long has this been going on? Rosa hesitated, her eyes meeting Vanessa's with a mixture of fear and defiance. Then she straightened her shoulders and made the decision that would change everything. Almost 2 years, sir, since a few months after the wedding. You treacherous little. Vanessa started toward Rosa, but Dominic's voice stopped her cold. Take one more step, and I will forget that we are in front of my daughter. Vanessa froze. Rosa, tell me everything. What followed was the most painful 20 minutes of Dominic Castellano's life. Rosa produced her journal and her photographs. She detailed incident after incident of verbal abuse, physical intimidation, and psychological manipulation. She described the bruises she had photographed, the meals Sophia had been denied, the hours the child had spent locked in her room as punishment for infractions as minor as laughing too loudly. Vanessa tried to interrupt several times, offering explanations and justifications that sounded increasingly desperate. When Rosa showed Dominic photographs of finger-shaped bruises on Sophia's upper arms, Vanessa claimed the child was clumsy and fell frequently. When Rosa recounted specific phrases Vanessa had used to tear down Sophia's self-worth, Vanessa insisted her words had been taken out of context. But the evidence was overwhelming, and Dominic was a man who had built his empire on the ability to distinguish truth from lies. When Rosa finished, silence filled the conservatory like a physical presence. Dominic looked at his daughter, really looked at her, in a way he realized he hadn't done in months. He saw the wariness in her eyes, the defensive hunch of her shoulders, the way she kept herself small and quiet as if hopping not to be noticed. This was not the bright, joyful child he remembered from before Vanessa entered their lives. This was a child who had been taught to be afraid in her own home. Sophia, he said gently, go with Rosa to the kitchen. She's going to clean up your hands properly and make you some hot chocolate. I'll come find you soon. Sophia looked up at him, with eyes that held a desperate question. Is she going away, Papa? Is Mama Vanessa going away forever? Dominic knelt down once more so that his eyes were level with his daughter's. Yes, Princess, she's going away forever, and I promise you, on your mother's memory, that no one will ever hurt you in this house again. For the first time in what felt like years, a genuine smile broke across Sophia's face. She threw her arms around her father's neck and held on with a strength that surprised him. I love you, Papa. I love you too, Princess, more than anything in this world. After Rosa led Sophia away, Dominic turned his attention to the woman he had married. Vanessa was standing exactly where he had told her to stop, her carefully maintained composure now hanging in tatters. Her perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, her designer suit suddenly looking like a costume rather than clothing. Dominic, please. Her voice had shifted to something soft and pleading. You have to understand, I was trying to help her. Children need discipline, structure. You were always so busy with work, and I was just trying to... Stop. Vanessa's mouth closed. Dominic walked slowly around the conservatory, touching the leaves of orchids that Catherine had planted, trailing his fingers along the edge of the fountain she had designed. This space had been created with love, and it had been violated by someone who understood nothing about what love truly meant. Do you know why I married you, Vanessa? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Because you loved me. Dominic laughed, but there was no humor in it. I married you because I thought you would love my daughter. I thought you would protect her the way Catherine would have wanted. I thought you could give her the feminine guidance she needed. He turned to face her, and Vanessa flinched at the cold fury in his eyes. I was wrong. Dominic, I can change. I can be better. I'll go to therapy. I'll take parenting classes. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Please don't throw away what we have over a few misunderstandings. A few misunderstandings? Dominic's voice rose for the first time. You told my daughter that her mother chose to die rather than raise her. You made a 7-year-old child believe that she was worthless, that her own father didn't love her. You used food deprivation as punishment. You left bruises on her body, and you call that a few misunderstandings. I was under pressure. Do you have any idea what it's like being married to someone like you? The danger, the secrecy, the constant fear that someone will put a bullet in you and leave me with nothing. So you took it out on an innocent child. She wasn't innocent. She was a constant reminder that I would never be your first choice, that I would always be competing with a ghost, that Catherine Castellano's daughter would always matter more than Vanessa Castellano's needs. The confession hung in the air between them, ugly and raw and finally honest. Yes, Dominic said softly. My daughter will always matter more than your needs. She will always matter more than anyone's needs. That is what being a parent means. It is a lesson you clearly never learned. He walked to his desk, a small writing table that Catherine had used for her correspondence, and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Vanessa's voice carried a note of real fear now. I'm calling my lawyer. You have 2 hours to pack your personal belongings and leave this house. Rosa will supervise to ensure you don't take anything that doesn't belong to you. You can't just throw me out. I'm your wife. I have rights. Dominic smiled, and it was the coldest expression Vanessa had ever seen on a human face. Check the prenuptial agreement you signed, Vanessa. Section 14, Clause 3. Any harm, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, inflicted upon my daughter by you, my staff, or any associates of yours, will result in the immediate termination of our marriage with no claim to any Castellano assets. My lawyers were very thorough. Vanessa's face went white. You planned for this. I planned for everything. It's why I'm still alive. Dominic's voice was flat, final. You have 2 hours. After that, my security team will escort you off the property. I suggest you use the time wisely. Dominic, please. And Vanessa, Dominic paused at the doorway, not bothering to turn around. If you ever attempt to contact my daughter, if you ever speak about our family to the press, if you ever do anything that causes Sophia even a moment of distress, I will respond in a manner appropriate to my profession. Do you understand what I'm telling you? The threat hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Vanessa understood perfectly. The conservatory was filled with laughter. Sophia Castellano, now 8 years old, was chasing butterflies among the orchids, while Rosa looked on with a smile. The little girl had changed remarkably in the months since Vanessa's departure. Her appetite had returned. Her drawings had become bright and colorful again. She had started taking piano lessons and couldn't stop talking about her new teacher. Dominic watched from the doorway, his heart full in a way he had almost forgotten was possible. After Vanessa left, he had made significant changes to his life. He had delegated more responsibilities to his lieutenants, freeing up time to be present for Sophia. He had hired a child psychologist who visited twice a week to help Sophia process the trauma she had experienced. He had instituted new household protocols to ensure that nothing like this could ever happen again. Most importantly, he had started talking to Sophia about her mother. Really talking. Sharing stories about Catherine, showing her photographs, letting her know that it was okay to miss someone and still be happy. Papa, look, Sophia called out, pointing to a butterfly that had landed on her finger. She chose me. Dominic crossed the conservatory and knelt beside his daughter, marveling at the delicate creature resting on her small hand. She has good taste, he said. She knows a princess when she sees one. Sophia giggled, the sound filling the space with joy. Rosa says butterflies are the spirits of people we love who want to visit us. Do you think this one is Mommy? Dominic looked at the butterfly, its wings shimmering in the afternoon light that filtered through the glass ceiling. I think, he said carefully, that your mother is always with you. In this garden she created, in the eyes you inherited from her, in the kindness of your heart and the brightness of your smile. You don't need a butterfly to carry her spirit, princess. You already carry it yourself." Sophia's eyes filled with happy tears. She threw her arms around her father's neck, sending the butterfly fluttering off to explore the orchids. "I love you, Papa. I love you too, Princess, more than all the stars in the sky." Rosa watched from across the conservatory, her own eyes misty with emotion. The journal she had kept, the photographs she had taken, the phone calls she had been so afraid to make, all of it had been worth it for this moment. Later that evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Dominic found Rosa in the kitchen, preparing the next day's meals with her customary efficiency. "Rosa." She looked up, setting down her knife. "Yes, sir." Dominic approached her with an envelope in his hand. "I never properly thanked you for what you did. You saved my daughter. You showed more courage than men twice your size who work for me. This is a small token of my appreciation." Rosa took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a check for an amount that made her gasp, along with documentation for a college fund in her son's name. "Sir, this is too much." "It's not enough." Dominic's voice was firm. "You are no longer an employee in this household, Rosa. You are family, and family takes care of its own." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, sir, thank you." Dominic nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Rosa, that phone call you made, the one where your voice was shaking, I know how hard that must have been. I know you were afraid of the consequences, but you did it anyway for Sophia's sake." Rosa nodded, unable to speak. "That's the definition of courage," Dominic said quietly. "Not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. My daughter is alive and happy today because you were brave enough to make that call. I will never forget it." He left the kitchen, and Rosa stood alone among the gleaming appliances, holding an envelope that represented more than money. It represented recognition, validation, a place in a family she had served loyally for years. She thought about Sophia, sleeping peacefully upstairs in a room that was finally truly safe. She thought about Dominic, who had turned out to be exactly the father she had always hoped he would be when the truth finally came to light. And she thought about Vanessa, who had learned too late that cruelty toward the innocent always carries a price. The moral of this story is simple but profound. The greatest threats don't always come from outside our walls. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. But when we have the courage to speak up, to protect the vulnerable, to choose love over fear, light will always find a way to break through the darkness. Real strength isn't about power or control. It's about having the humility to see our blind spots, the wisdom to trust the right people, and the fierce determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Subscribe for more stories, and remember, love, when it's real, conquers all. 3 years later, Rosa would attend Sophia's 10th birthday party as an honored guest. She would watch the bright, confident young girl blow out her candles and make a wish. And when Sophia caught her eye across the crowded room and smiled, a smile full of gratitude and love, Rosa would know that some choices, no matter how frightening, are always worth making. The Castellano household had healed, not by forgetting the darkness, but by walking through it together and emerging into the light on the other side. And in the conservatory, Catherine's orchids bloomed more beautifully than ever, tended now by the daughter who carried her mother's gentle spirit and her father's fierce heart. Some stories don't have villains who win. Some stories end exactly the way they should.